Okay, so we'll start our discussion with Book 2 of the Executive Order 292, which is now the distribution of powers of government. Well, you have to understand that this is the very basic, okay? Before you organize or conduct a meeting, you should know first this basic principle. So, first, the governmental power shall be exercised in accordance with the following basic principles and policies. One, Philippines is a democratic and republican state. Sovereignty resides in the people and government authority emanates from them. So what does it mean? Simply means that all the structure, the management style should always be in accordance with the principle of democracy and republicanism. When we say democracy, it comes from the word Greek word demos, which means people, and another word kratos, which means to rule. So in other words, when you say democracy, it is ruled by the people. To simplify the word democracy, it simply means that it is the majority the majority decision prevails over the minority. And when we say majority, it's more than the half. Okay. So, but when we say democracy as well, it refers to the people who are supposed to be there. In order for it to transact legally, there must be the presence of majority. Let's say there are 100 people are required to attend. In order for you to transact a business in an organization duly organized, you need 51 people who are around. Okay, if less than that, you cannot proceed. Otherwise, there's no majority, and it violates the principle of democracy. So, what should you do if your meeting is not attended by a majority? Well, you have to adjourn, or um, there's no legal or there's no reason for you to conduct them. Otherwise, if conducted or pursued, it will be illegal. Okay, so but of that, let us say there's now majority who are present of the people required to attend. Let us say there are 51, but on the meeting conducted, you need still another 50% or more than 50%. Let us say in that meeting you're going to decide certain matters which affects the organization. You need still another 50% for it to be carried or legally binding. If you do not reach that vote, which is more than 50% of those who are around, then still the transaction is not legally binding. But if you insist on that, even if there's no majority decision, then the person who imposed it, even the president or legislators of that organization, may be held personally liable. And what does it mean? Any transaction entered into without approval of the majority, he himself or the person who imposed it will be personally liable, and it is not the organization who will be liable. And which means there will be a piercing of the bill, okay, of the corporate fiction. A piercing of the bill of the corporate fiction simply means that there will be cutting off cutting off of the line between the executive officers and the organization. Basically, if you do acts with legal effects, then the liability will be attached to the organization. If there will be liability, then it will be paid by the assets of the corporation or organization. Okay, so that is in if it is in accordance with the principle of democracy, meaning Of all those required to be attend, majority is present, and all those a majority of those who are present still voted in favor of a certain act. Now, going back to the 50% majority, 51% is not actually 50%, no, or 51%. Now, it's about 50% plus 1, okay? Let us say there are 250% of that plus 1, 101. Okay, not 51%. No, 50% plus 1, as long as it reaches beyond the majority. Now, let us say there are 51 now who are present. Okay, in a decision is still required to get the 50%. Okay, 50% plus 1. Okay, not 51, but 50% plus 1% wrong. Okay, because it may be any other number. Okay, let us say there are 1,000. 51% is not one person. The basic principle is that you have to get higher than the majority. One person may be higher than the majority, but may not be the 1%. Okay, because 1% may be two or more or even one. Okay, so what's the requirement is that only an above majority. So, and the above majority is one person. It cannot be half as long as he can decide on it and cast his vote. Okay, so you have to be very careful in transacting a business, since it is a democratic. Then you have to ask approval from the majority. Otherwise, take note, if your decision will jeopardize the organization and you are deciding it on your own, not in the name of the organization, because you did not attain the majority vote approval, then you may be held personally liable and not the corporation or not the organization. Okay, so countless times many politicians, mayor, punong barangay, or even governor failed to attain this one basic requirement. Why? Because the majority decision leads you, the executive officer, to enter into a contract. Without that majority decision, you do not have any right to enter into a contract. The majority decision is actually your power to rule, okay, or decide on any matters. Without that majority decision, then your transactions entered into will be questionable. And if there are, again, liabilities, um, and it will be attributed to the organization or local government unit that they represent, then um, that can be revived, and therefore there will be a separate um, entity now between the one who executes illegally without approval of the board or council and the corporate asset. So it will be now the liability, personal liability of the one who executes without the majority decision. Okay, so that's the importance of a democratic country. It should be ruled by the majority. But there is a misconception that in a board there should always be odd numbers. Well, that's wrong still. Why? Because the purpose of the chairman is only to vote when there is a tie. Now, granting there are 8, okay? So one is the chairman, right? So there are 7. So that 7, if they decides 8 will be 4 in favor, 3 against, then there is no deadlock, okay? Or there's no tie. There's no need of the chairman to vote. Now, let us say there are 9, okay? Um, 4 is in favor, 4 is against, then there's a tie, right? So it will be the chairman who will break the tie. So still there's no deadlock, okay? Because the conception is that in order for them to transact easily, their board, normally is an odd number, but still it's wrong, because even if it's odd, still you can still decide without any stalemate. Stalemate meaning equal. Okay, but even if it's odd number, let's say 7 or 9, still there is no deadlock. Even if it's even even numbers, let's say 8, as I told you, 4 is in favor, 3 is against. There's no deadlock. There's even because the chairman only votes to break the tie. Okay. So how about the principle of a republican state? It simply means that there is a rule of law. Okay. And then because it is impossible for us to be there in Congress, all of us, while we only send representative. Okay, so that's also a meaning of a republican state. We send representatives are under the rule of law. Okay, and it's always the people who's going to decide. In the hierarchy of the laws, as I explained, the Constitution being the highest in terms of written laws, but still there is another body higher than the Constitution, and that is the people. So if the Constitution's policy is absent or lacking, then the people can provide. Okay, why? Because the author of the Constitution is the people themselves. So that is why sovereignty resides in the people and all government authority emanates from them. And we go to the second one. The state values the dignity of every human person and guarantees full respect for human rights. Okay, these are actually found in the article in the basic policy of the Constitution. The state values the dignity of every human person and guarantees full respect for human rights. Now, if there are violations of the human rights, alleged violation in our country, it will be the duty of the courts to settle it or even provides punishment if there is. Okay? So it cannot be any other body outside the Philippines. Okay, as long as the court functions, then anybody will be held liable. Even the president still under the if it found out there are violation, then maybe prosecuted by the other body, which is the judicial branch. Okay, the civilian authority is at all times supreme over the military. Why? Because the military is the protector of the people. Okay, the state shall ensure autonomy and local governments. This is actually embedded in the local government code and even in Article 10 of the Constitution, which provides autonomy. Or in other words, when I say autonomy, it refers to decentralization of power and the decentralization of the administration, which means as well that the president's authority over the local government units is only supervision, okay? While the local government units themselves, in its hierarchy, the higher authority has the power of control over decisions of the local government units, executive at that. Let us say, the decision of the punong barangay chairman can be overturned or reviewed, revised, um, amend by the higher authority, and that is the mayor, because the mayor has the power of control over local um, barangays. While the decision of the mayor may also be um, approved, revived, or amend, may be amended, okay, or rejected, because the governor has the power of control over its mayor, and okay, because the mayor is the municipal mayor or the city mayor. If it's a component city, is under the province. So the head has exercises control over lower bodies. The exception is that the national government has no control over local government units because of the principle of local autonomy. That is why it may not be important actually to have a federal form of government. Okay, why? Because the local government code actually is all about um, it's like federalism. Okay, but if federalism would mean distribution of the income equally among provinces or regions, then I think it would be better than the local government code itself. Now, the territorial and political subdivision of the Republic of the Philippines are provinces, cities, municipalities, and barangays. Basically, these are the four, but there are other, and now it's known as the autonomous regions, and there are two. Okay, Muslim Mindanao and then the Cordilleras, which is found in the north. The autonomous region of Muslim Mindanao, it's in Mindanao, of course, and the Cordillera is the administrative region of Dakar, which was autonomous during the time of Corazon Aquino. Okay, so basically there are four province, cities, municipalities, and barangays, and in the cities there are two, which may be a component city or independent city, and these are highly industrialized city like Cebu, like Cebu City. Excuse me. The separation of church and state shall be inviolable. What does it mean? Okay, so there are properties of the church which may not be under the state. Okay, which means they're exempt from the payment of tax. Okay, examples: real properties intended for the church is not subject to real property taxes. But as to its income on other matters like a business entered into by the church, still taxable. And that includes even institutions which claims that there are are a hospital which is intended for or school is intended for educational and hospitals and schools, okay, intended for the education of the students, as long as the property is related to the business which is for education, they are exempt. If the property or income of the hospital is or if it can be proven that nothing goes to the owner, okay, it is basically intended for the improvement of the facility, then it is not taxable. Okay, a reason is that one is there's a separation of church and state. And then we have seven, the right of the people and their organization to effective and reasonable participation at all levels of social, political, and economic decision making shall not be breached. Okay, the state shall by law facilitate the establishment of adequate consultation mechanisms. It's still in line with number one, which is a democratic and republican state where people has the right to participate in decision making. Okay, the powers, okay, expressly vested in any branch of the government shall not be exercised by or delegated to or any other branch of the government except to the extent authorized by law. What does it mean? If it is purely an executive branch, okay, or if it's purely exercised by the executive power, it cannot be delegated to any other office, okay, or any other branch. It cannot be delegated to the legislative branch, or it cannot be delegated to the judicial branch. Okay, in other words, each branches shall be equal, and the exception is that when it is authorized by the Constitution or authorized by law, actually, and that authorization is actually found in the augmentation of the budget, because the Constitution actually gives the president a leeway or a free, um, it's like a freedom to determine the increase the debt. Okay, and if you read some of the articles, there's one article in the Constitution or section which provide that in any event when there is when there is a necessity to increase the debt, okay, the president actually upon determining the inflation may increase the borrowing. Okay, so in that case, the president exercising now um, legislative power. Okay, so it's a prerogative now of the president granted by the other branch, which is the legislative power, legislative branch. Okay, basically it's not the there should be no delegation of power, but if the constitution itself delegates it, it's allowed. Another also, if in case of tax laws where the legislator who makes the tax or pass the law approved by Congress, it provides that if there's an inflation, the president may increase, okay, the collection of tax or increase the rate. Okay. Another also is the provision of the constitution where instead of collecting only 40%, which is the IRA, the president actually, because of the need, may choose or opt to have 40%, or it's other way around, it could be 40 to 30. Now we go to the other branch, which is the legislative power. Okay, so you remember there are three powers. Okay, executive power, legislative, and judicial power. Okay, so they are equal, and each of that department is, it's actually a department, but by their power is called executive power, legislative power, and judicial power. They are equal. Okay, they are the highest. Only that the number of people who who represent it are different. Like the president is only exercised by one person, while legislative power exercised by Congress, which are not more than 250, including the plus the Senate, which is 24, and the other equal power, which is vested in the Supreme Court, which are there are 15. Okay, so there are 15 members of the Supreme Court, headed by the Chief Justice, appointed as well by the President. Upon the recommendation of the Judicial and Bar Council, they're going to nominate three, and they're the one who screened it before the three will be submitted to the President. The President will just pick one, whichever is um, he pleased to appoint. So the legislative powers vested in Congress, which consists of a Senate and the House of Rep. I already mentioned this one. Okay, there's also provision where the people may provide or pass a law, and that is called the initiative and referendum. Initiative simply means that they are the one who actually propose, but it requires certain number of signatures for it to be approved. And then while referendums, whether there will be people will be asked whether they approve a certain law passed by Congress. Now, and that basically it refers to the constitutional amendment or or revision. Okay, but there's no amendment in case of no there's no initiative actually if it's only an amendment. Now we go to inhibitions of members of Congress. So no senator or members of the House of Rep may hold any other office or employment in the government or subdivisions, agency or instrumentality thereof. Okay, including government-owned and controlled corporations or their subsidiaries during their term without forfeiting his seat. Okay, why? What is prohibited here, or what's the rationale behind philosophy behind all this, so that they can concentrate on their job, which is a lawmaking body. Okay, so they will be focused on on passing a law that will eventually solve the problems of the Philippines. Okay, so if they are lawyers, then they cannot practice. Okay, so in fact, it is prohibited if you're a government officer, um, to work at the same time appear in court. Okay, it is not allowed except if you get a permission from the head of agency, which is in writing. Okay, and it must not also be done during the office hours. So that's the problem if you are working in government. Okay, so neither shall be appointed to any office which he may have been created. Okay, or the emoluments thereof increased during his term for which he was elected. In other words, he cannot make an office, okay, and then later on he will become the head after he resigns. Okay, so or he cannot make a law increasing its salary, and later on, um, he cannot make a law that will increase his own salary. Okay, why? It's a self-serving, and well, will not be. It may not be. It may be contrary to the intention of running an office which is actually public service. Well, to expand it more, there are actually, based on my experience of the um, officer of the subdivision, sometimes now in the subdivision, people who are working on it, if they are elected by the people as board of directors, sometimes the honorarium is not enough. Okay, what the people what the officers will do is to increase it. They pass a law. Okay, and I objected. Why? Because if you want to increase it, then it should not ask who will benefit. Okay, because that would be self-serving. You are only entitled to the salary until the term. If you want to increase it, it pass a law and effective on the next year or the next set of officers. Not the person who make it, who pass it to be a law, will benefit. Okay, so that will defeat the purpose of public service. Now we go to the Electoral Tribunal. The Senate and the House of Reps shall each have their own electoral tribunals. Okay, this actually refers to the election. Like if you are senator, and then there's a question on your qualification or on your winning, then there's a Senate electoral tribunal or set, and then for the House of Reps, as soon as you were elected, and there's a question on your on how you win, or there's a challenge electoral protest against you, then it will be the House of Rep Electoral Tribunal who will solve the case. So there are 9 members, and 3 of whom shall be judicial justices of the Supreme Court. Okay. Now another, okay, for the appointments, there's actually a group that will screen who are those people elected by the chosen or appointed by the president. So example of which is the appointment of Gina Lopez, the secretary of DNR before, was appointed, but later on the appointment was not approved by the Commission on Appointments. Take note, the president actually has the prerogative of whoever he likes to be its cabinet members. The cabinet members is called the secretary. Okay, they are the heads of the different departments. It is own prerogative, but the qualification of that will be submitted to the Commission on Appointments. And what is the composition of that? We have the Senate President as ex officio chairman, meaning the President himself is chairman, and then 12 senators, okay, and then 12 members of the House of Rep. So, one ex officio chairman, okay, how many all in all? Oh, chairman 1, then plus 12, um, 13, plus another 12 members of the House of Rep or Congressman, there are 25. Okay? So if you will be asked how many members of the House of Rep that constitute, how many members that will constitute the commission appointment, there are 25. One ex-Senate President as an ex-officio chairman, and then plus 12 senators, and that exclude the ex-officio chairman, right? It's very clear. Okay, that the ex-officio chairman who is a Senate President excludes is excluded in the 12 senators. So there are 13 senators actually. Okay, because the president is the chairman, Senate President. Then plus the members of the House of Rep. Okay, and they are elected by the House on the basis of proportional representation of the parties or parties organization registered under the party list system. Okay, so let's say there are um, Liberal Party. They may appoint who will represent um, the commission appointments. Okay, so if there are majority, if the majority right now is Pinipila, but then there should be more than more than 50%. Okay, so let's say if there are also Liberal Party, then they will actually proportionally represent, and then other political parties may also be filling the 12 or the 24. Okay, so because it's says here each house, what do you mean by each house? So the Senate, they have their own compositions of the parties. Okay, what do you mean by parties? These are election, no? You will know them during election because when you run as a candidate, there are an affiliations like PDP Laban, or um the coalition of party of Marcos and Sara. Okay, so or a liberal party. Okay, if you're also liberal party, then you can actually compose the commission on appointments. Okay, so the chairman and the commission shall not vote. Okay, so the one who said, even if the chairman, that will applies to all. Okay, as long as you are a chairman, you will not vote only when there is a tie. Chairman of the commission shall not vote except again in case of tie. That applies as well to organizations. In case of tie, the president, the chairman will vote. The commission shall act on all appointments submitted within 30 days session, okay, of the Congress for their submission. Okay, the commission shall rule by the majority vote of all its members. So this is again a reiteration of the principle of democracy, where people, or will the members of the organization, vote in by majority. Okay, that's how they do business. So the majority here refers to those who are present, because some of them may be absent, right? But as long as those who are present is majority, meaning let us say there are 20, there are 25 now, right? For them to conduct a business and continue with legal effects, then out of the 25, which is 13, okay, there are 13 of them are present, they can actually proceed. So if there are 13, the required vote for the approval of a certain candidate, or a certain appointee, is 13. Half of 13 is, what is half of 13? What is the 50% plus 1? Oh, you answer me. I'm testing you if you are around. What's the half of 13? What's the majority? Anybody from the class? What is half of 13?